Hi, it's Maria, and this is number 43 of Forgiveness to Love, My Life Exposed here. And today we're going to have about as much fun as we can have with the subtitle of this one is The Key to Wills and Trusts. And there are many, many of us who are experiencing this, and it needs some clarity. And so I'm hoping that that's what I can bring to the table with you today. At the same time, I'm wearing I feel like I'm Mr. Rogers, like before he got on air, he, what did he do? He put on his sweater. Well, before I was getting ready to make this video, or while I was getting ready to make this video, I said, oh, I have to put on my top and my necklace. So, and I thought, oh, that's so crazy. Here we are, we're at number 43, and I've worn the same thing 43 times. But you know what? It's just for an hour or so when I do these videos. But it becomes kind of like a uniform. Well, it's kind of like a doctor wearing, his white coat, or a fireman wearing his apparel, or a policeman, or I'd prefer to think of it as Mr. Rogers wearing, his sweater. But anyway, now at least I don't have to be so embarrassed that I'm wearing it again. And it's just so that everybody knows that, that this is one of the Forgiveness to Love videos. And so anyway, today we're going to talk about the key to the wills and the trusts, because, I've spoken so much about so many of us who have been in a situation where our parents die, and then whoever gets to the bank first or something cleans out the safety deposit box, and then, all of a sudden there are forged signatures on the deed for the house, and people are just, it just destroys families. Well, yes, it certainly did destroy my family, but there are so many things that I've learned that I just feel that it's imperative that I share as much as I can with you. And by example, you'll be able to kind of hone that in your own situation. And so, right here and right now, I'm going to share that, and anything that discounts what I am going to share is, as far as I'm concerned, is a form of corruption, because it is written right here in black and white in the trust, in the will. And although attorneys for the dark, or attorneys for the other side, or shall we say attorneys for the thieving side, although they went before a judge, I'll bet that they didn't reveal a copy of the trust, and certainly not the page that had the specific clause, which is known as the spendthrift clause. And it's a provision, it's the spendthrift provision, actually. And it is a directive by the decedent, my parents. It is a directive that not one penny go to any creditor or to anyone that they can specifically designate. And so, but my father just put down the creditor. Especially, and in our case, it was especially the ex-son-in-law, who sued to get bogus judgments to steal my inheritance. But actually, that clause was in the original trust of like 1990. So I think my father knew that my ex was going to be a problem when he became an ex. Well, he was a problem even while he wasn't an ex, but he became a bigger problem when he was an ex. And so he kept suing and getting bogus judgments in order to steal my inheritance. And so by virtue of this spendthrift clause being in the trust, he wasn't allowed to touch anything. Certainly not like 4 Allied van lines, those moving vans that look like they're a block long. Well, those came to the condo parking lot on Clearwater Beach. And, they couldn't even fit through the guard gate. And so they were blocking traffic all on Gulf Boulevard there. And it was like, you'd think, oh my gosh, a mansion is either being emptied or filled or whatever. And it was just my ex stealing, you know, like my grand piano and all kinds of, and all my clothes and anything else he could think of, I suppose, and whatever other furniture he wanted, but all of that. But he wasn't entitled to any of it. And yet he took it all. And so he went to a judge. And I'm not sure exactly how that worked, but I do know that I lived in that condo for 10 years, and I was never notified that even my son actually had his father's attorney go with him to court, or else just file the papers and say that he was entitled to my home. So yes, in estate situations, you have people like coming out of the closet. Although with me, it was the three main characters, you know, like the Three Stooges. It was the ex who died along the way, and then the sibling and the son. And so they kind of carried out the torture. But, and even after they had taken it, and I didn't even know it, I didn't know it was written in their names that they were allowed to do that. And so still, my mail was forwarded. And so I didn't even get mail, which was, I didn't get my son's student loan bills. And I had a Parent Plus loan, and so I owed like $100,000 for my son's education. And, you know, he's got millions, and I'm stuck with the loan. And of course, you know, I'm at poverty level, so I don't have to pay anything until I get out of poverty level, which would be a good thing, actually. It's kind of like, remember when they say it's a good thing to pay taxes because that means you actually earn money. So it's kind of the same thing. But all my mail was actually forwarded to, X had a home in Batesville, Indiana, and he worked for a company named Hillenbrand, and their headquarters are in Batesville, Indiana. And so apparently he bought a home there. So when, I guess he would travel there every once in a while from Chicago. And so anyway, maybe he did it for investment purposes. I really don't know. And I didn't even know he had the home there. But my mail was actually forwarded there. And so I didn't get my mail. I didn't get, as I said, the student loan bill. I didn't get, what else didn't I get? I didn't get the IRS. There was they put a tax lien on my property because they sent me a letter and I never responded, but I never got it. And what else didn't I get? Well, I guess my mail wasn't forwarded. Maybe anything from the attorneys, but that's what happens when, you know, and to steal someone's mail, that's a felony. When you interfere with the United States Postal Service, that's a felony. And so, anyway, you know, that's what happened. And so, let's see, what else can I tell you? And yet, even when I went to the USPS and I said, I don't understand, I'm not getting any of my mail in my condo. And so they looked at it on the computer, and it should have been right there, right? And so they said, well, lady, you know, we can't help you. And so just wait, maybe you're just not getting any mail right now. And so that, you know, that really wasn't the case. But again, you know, the bigger question is, why would a judge give a child, really, his mother's home, right? And conceivably, he actually had 3 homes because he took mine, and then he had his own home in the UK because he moved to the UK. He lived in London. And then he claimed his father's Chicago Lakeshore Drive condo address as his own as well. And so I don't think that they probably ever shared that with the judge, not when he took my only home, right? And so, and interestingly enough, you know, as some children do, he had a drug and alcohol problem. And so for him to be inheriting a lot of money is probably the very worst thing that can happen to a child, most certainly. And so, you know, it just got weirder and weirder and weirder, really. And there were just so many crimes being committed. And it almost seemed like, remember the movie Willard? it just seemed like there were all these rats that were like scurrying around, stealing all they could get. You know, it's just like, and so, and then you had Sibling, who was kind of like the head honcho. She was kind of directing everybody as to what to do. And I hear she was on my phone 24/7, and she's on my computer, and she deals with YouTube and Vimeo and Facebook and whatever, and has her little minions there, and I guess limits my audience. And so that's why sometimes I'm just talking to myself, but that's okay because you know, we can do what we can do, and eventually the dark does get exposed. And this is exactly the time. We are living in an amazing time on planet Earth right now, where a lot of this stuff, all this dirt that was hidden under the bed and hidden, you know, under the rug and whatever, is really coming to light. And we go, yay, you know, because we tell the truth, and when we realize that other people have just been like looking right into our eyes and just lying to us, left, right, and center, we just go, oh my gosh, I can't even believe that people would do that, because we would never do that. But here you've got Sibling, who is married to a Clearwater orthopedic surgeon. And so she's obviously not in any type of financial distress. And so, you know, she's there, you know, taking this and taking that and changing the locks to my home and giving the ex half of my condo and giving of one condo, and then giving my son my other condo, and then taking whatever she wanted to take. And then, I mean, it just gets worse and worse. And the lying and the stealing and the cheating and the tracking and the following and the harassing and dozens of other crimes, you know. And then she had the nerve to falsify and edit the trust and will and include her doctor husband as I will give you, this was in quotes, the co-attorney, in fact, to, manage my parents' estate and make all decisions and exercise all powers given to him and his co-attorney, in fact. And so that co-attorney, in fact, was a cousin. And so my father had done that because he said, okay, I have two daughters and they're going to split the estate. And then if there's some issue with one of the daughters, if one of them, you know, should die or whatever, and then, which I suppose that was what my sister was hoping would happen, but if one of them should die, then you have two other people that would manage. So one would be partial to the one sister, and then the other one would be partial to the other one. And so here she had her husband being the one that would be partial to her, right? Obviously. And then she had the cousin who was an attorney, and hopefully he was ethical and would do the right thing. And he was the one that would be more partial to my side. And so, so that's what happened there. And then, so when I came to Clearwater in January of this year, in order to kind of clean up this estate issue, all of this mess and all of this BS, I went to find my cousin. And it was very weird because they said he had died, and I guess just a few months before. And I thought, you know, that was very weird. And it was almost like, because it was pretty clear to everyone that I was coming to Florida to work on this estate issue. And it just kind of reminded me of in 2010, when my father had said, because my mother, you know, was in an assisted living home, or I don't know what you call those things, but anyway, it was, yeah, they had a lot of people that had memory issues and strokes and things like that. It was more cognitive issues. And so, so my father had said, girls, at Christmas, I am going to divide your mother's jewels between the two of you. And on Christmas Eve. And so it was pretty exciting, actually. But unfortunately, he died the end of August. So he didn't actually divide those. And then my sister looted the whole thing and she took it all. So it was almost like, yeah, he never made it in order to do that division. And then my cousin never made it in order to be a witness or to tell the truth about what was really going on with the estate, and to find the right legal channels in which to pursue this most ridiculous fiasco, right? And so actually, and there was no love lost between him and my sister, actually, because he was the attorney that had drawn up the original trust. And then when my sister started suing me, the ex sued me, they both sued me, they both sued my father. It was just so crazy. But what happened is my cousin actually withdrew. He didn't want to work with my sister. And so, and then, he died. So it was just all very weird, just one weird thing after another. And then when my father was mysteriously hidden for 6 weeks, and he was in the hospital and no one told me. And meanwhile, things were being changed with the will and the trust while he was in the hospital. And I didn't even know he was there. So go figure. I mean, that was like a brilliant plan. I think it should be on FBI files or crimes of the devil or something like that. Anyway, it was just too weird. So I did need to come back, and there were just so many people that were passing. And then you had Sibling and her hubby kind of taking control of everything. And so, including my parents' medical care, which actually cost them both their lives. And so, for me, what I saw flagrant criminality, like the size of the Pacific Ocean. I mean, it was boundless, really. It seemed limitless. It seemed that there was no depth that was too deep, that it was an abyss that some people had fallen into, and that I just wasn't sure how anything would ever be resolved, because the people that actually took control were the ones committing the crimes. And so how do you deal with something like that? I didn't really understand. And so, you have documents, legal documents that are rewritten, and they're laden with even misspellings. And when I was sent a copy of the trust in 2015 or something, I only had bits and pieces of it in that envelope. And I went to the courthouse to find that particular document. And you know what? It doesn't exist, because the document that she sent me was not the document that was filed in court. And so there were all kinds of misspellings. And my third son, his middle name is Charles. And so his name was misspelled. It was Charges. It was, Charges or something like that. It was so ridiculous. And then one of the witnesses happened to be a cousin, and her name is Mary, and they wrote Maria, and then her last name was misspelled. And my father, on the durable power of attorney, his name was misspelled. I mean, it was just my own father. I mean, it was a document that you can't do that. And there were just other things that were crossed out, and there were lines that were empty, and, where someone would have initialed something. Well, that wasn't there. I know I'm rambling, because it's so ridiculous that it just doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense in this country, in this time, where we are undergoing this evolution and this you know, this movement, this raising of our frequency, and yet we're seeing such low vibrational people walking around and doing these really weird things. And so it reminded me of a book called Lord of the Flies. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it, but it's by William Golding. And I think I read it in like 8th grade or something. It was one of those books, but it was something that really left its mark on me. And it was about a group of British boys. And they were adolescents, and they were somehow stranded on an uninhabited island. And there were no adults there. And so they basically started to rule themselves. But as, you know, adolescent boys with a lot of testosterone and a lot of ego, they decided that they didn't want to listen to someone, and then they wanted to be in charge, or they wanted their best friend to be in charge. And anyway, there was all of this dissension, and it ended up where they had these murderous wildfires, and turned into a huge disaster. And so fortunately, though, the wildfires created the rescue team, which saw the wildfires and they saw what was going on. And so ultimately that was their saving grace. And so when the boys talked about the truth of what really went on, they actually underwent some type of a transformation, because they saw in themselves that what was going on is it was like a mass hysteria. And they rejected the notion that they were these murderous adolescents, that they were these murderous savages, really. But in fact, were scared little children that ended up kind of just getting caught up in this mass hysteria. And I have to say that I drew the analogy to my situation and what I see regarding the murder of my parents and the murdering of other people as well, and the crimes that I've seen, and the rewriting, you know, the forging, the perjury, the thieving of millions, the thousands of flying monkeys all over the world that have been involved in my case. And yet, you know, I don't want to sound so arrogant or so, you know, entitled that, oh yes, there are that many people that know about my case. But, you know, there were really, I was tracked everywhere I went. And so, you know, wherever I went, everybody I spoke to ended up being a flying monkey, as hard as that seems to imagine. But people were groveling for money, and they'd say, oh, if you, and it was such a bad smear campaign that in fact, if someone spoke to me, then they would get a call saying, we'll pay you some money if you ignore her, or if you betray her, or if you backstab her, or if you do whatever. And so it was kind of like people were on the phone saying, hey, you know what, I just got a couple $1,000. They just direct deposited. And so, yeah, what else can we do to to hurt her sister? What else can we do? And so it was almost like that mass hysteria that was prevalent in Lord of the Flies. But I have to say that when I was leaving Scottsdale, Arizona in 2018 actually, I had gone to a church and had gotten to know some of the people there. And, you know, every church I've gone to seems to have like a building fund that all of a sudden, you know, gets this large donation. And what I've heard is that the sibling gives whatever church I go to, and there've been at least like 10 or 12 of them in all these years. $100,000 to start a building fund. And so therefore, she can then have cameras all over, and she can then, have her special relationship with the priest or whatever. And then she can have, like the parish council or something. And then everyone is kind of watching me like, what is she going to do? Why would we get paid so much money to stalk her and to ignore her and to shun her unless she's like some crazy lady, right? And so I remember talking to this one guy, and so he said, I think I'm going to retire. And I said, you're going to retire? You're like 40 years old. Why would you do that? And he said, well, I think he was in construction or window washing or something like that. Anyway, and he said, I have a new stream of income. And I said, oh, well, congratulations. And then after I left, then they stopped getting paid unless they're still in contact with me. But I hear that he was livid that I actually left, because once I left, my inheritance dried up for that group. And then wherever I went after that, where did I go after that? Oh, yeah, I went to Oregon. To study with a spiritual teacher. And that's where I had the brain injury on the way there, with that lovely bus door. But yeah, so that kind of dried up for him in Scottsdale, and then it kind of opened up for people in Ashland and Medford and Talent, Oregon. So there are people all over, and there are people that I had met in Brazil and from all over the world that were involved, and I don't even like to focus on it. It's just that even I couldn't believe it. I mean, it's one thing to, have had so many wonderful friends when I was in Chicago, and we would do so many wonderful things together, and we were, going to different charity functions, and we were going to fashion shows, and we were traveling, and we were doing all that. That's one thing, and you're seeing that was a positive thing. And yet, when you think that now you have even more people, but they're actually like trying to get you, and you think, oh, this is like ridiculous. But why? Why would anybody do that? I mean, it just makes no sense in any case. And then so you've got the flying monkeys who are getting paid, and then you've got the cover-up of what they've done. And not only what the flying monkeys have done, but because they've done a lot of horrible stuff too. But then all the crimes that they know that the inner circle that's thieving and taking my home and taking this and taking that and trying to plagiarize my writing and sabotage, and have the flying monkeys come into my home and mess with my food and just slander me and smear my name and make up all these lies about me. I just heard another lie about me, and I was horrified. Let me see if I can remember what it was. Well, I think we've talked about the fact that, some people that don't know me, they think I'm a prostitute. I have an STD. I'm a thief. I'm a liar. I'm a cheater. I'm mentally ill. What else did they say about me? Just about anything you could think of, really. I don't know. But the last thing, what was the last thing? Well, it'll come to me. But, there were dozens of crimes, there were deaths, and there were illnesses, and there's sabotage and destitution and libel and prostitution and pedophilia. And, I think the latest thing she told somebody, this is what I was told, is that there's a case that is being investigated on child abuse. Can you imagine that one? And so, and maybe, I don't know if it had anything to do with some sexual thing, but, anything. It's almost like, taking the pasta and throwing it against the wall and seeing what sticks. Well, based on the stuff that she has said, nothing would have stuck. And yet, it's kind of then you've got you're kind of part of the mass hysteria, right? Because you see people going, oh, did you hear that she did that? And did you hear that she did that? And oh my gosh, and oh, no wonder she's homeless. Oh yeah, no, it didn't have anything to do with somebody crossing off her name and putting their name on stuff and stealing everything. But maybe, you know, her father didn't want her to inherit, or maybe she spent, you know, she just spent millions of dollars and she, you know, on facelifts or something. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, there was kidnapping and theft and robbery and burglary and extortion and aggravated assault and battery. I mean, these are just some of the crimes we've had here, you know. Bank fraud, medical, legal, business, malpractice, obviously murder, forgery, perjury, what else? Harassment, gang stalking, extortion, and on and on. Yep, those were just some of the crimes that I witnessed and experienced and began speaking about. And yet the goal, you know, was obviously to block me from doing so. But it included the poisonings, you know, and the slander and the backstabbing. And of course, the 25 years of lawsuit mania. That should be a game. I mean, really, lawsuit mania. And so, and it was to harass me. And it was, you know, and the unlawful gag, which I think I spoke about in the last one. And that was, yeah. So whenever, you know, what they call people whistleblowers, or whenever someone raises the consciousness raises the exposure of certain crimes, then they say, oh yeah, well, we'll just shut her up. She's harassing us. So we'll just give her an order of protection and then she won't be able to talk. But yeah, in over 40 years, I think, those things were thrown at me to disable me and to render me, you know, really unable to reveal the truth of what I saw. But, you know, it's kind of like the boys in Lord of the Flies, where people take the law into their own hands. And so they can alter documents. They can feel entitled. I mean, you have to really have quite an ego to walk into court and know that you're just going to lie and turn everything in your favor and not be concerned about the consequences. I mean, I can't even imagine that level of egotism where you just, you know, that empowered feeling of, but it's a perverted empowerment, because it's for the dark. There's nothing good about it. And so then it's like this huge conspiracy, and it becomes so toxic. And the more toxic it becomes, the more obvious it is. And people were paid to not talk if the truth were ever exposed. And so, you know, it's like the cover-up of epic proportion. And I know I said that in the last video, that's really what Watergate was all about. You know, it was the cover-up, which was so much worse than the crime. Well, here, I'm not sure that the cover-up is worse than the murders of my parents. But at the same time, since then, the crimes have just continued, and the cover-up has really exploded, and just included so many more people throughout, you know, throughout the country, throughout the world. It's just crazy. Anyway, oh, I know, I read something earlier, and it was saying that real evil can manipulate almost anyone, really. And to believe, actually, that that they're the victim. And when they feel they're the victim, you know, when someone feels like they've been victimized, then they're kind of incited to destroy the rest of the people who actually figure out what's going on. So it really is that form of mass hysteria, because you get all these people who just are rumor mongering and talking and texting and meeting and having these secret conversations, and they're part of a group, you know, they're part of a coven, or they're part of a, what do you call some of those really dysfunctional, misogynistic groups where a woman is just treated as trash, and so you have a lot of male attorneys out there who really don't believe that women are equal citizens, right? And you have people in all vocations who are still exhibiting forms of misogynism, and it's truly tragic. But I do think that right now things are changing, and so we'll pray on that one. And so and then there's the whole medical thing, right? And so when doctors make a mockery of the medical dictum, which is first, do no harm, right? And when doctors don't really take that to heart, and doctors take the Hippocratic Oath, remember Hippocrates? And so, and part of that is, I'll just tell you a little bit about that, where he says, never will I betray my patients or risk their well-being to satisfy my own vanity. And so he says, I will not hurt my fellow man, even, and if I ever break this oath, then let my gods take away my knowledge of this art and my own health. And here speaks a citizen, a servant of the people, and may I be destroyed if I betray these words. And this is a very, very solemn oath, and it is quite poignant, and it is, I don't believe that physicians take this lightly. And yet I think what happens again is this form of mass hysteria, when all of a sudden they get some information, or they get a call and says, oh yes, this person is coming in as your patient, and she's done this and this and this and this, and so we don't want her treated, or we don't want you to perform the scans that are necessary, or we want you to in some way alter her blood work, or we want you to do something, whatever it is that is not ethical. And so when it's all of a sudden they get these calls that say, yes, she's on our list. And so she has a mark on her list because she's talking, and they don't say why, though. They just say, oh, well, she's, has some mental issues or something. But yeah, that's what happens. And so although they vowed to keep this sacred, I don't think that all of them do, unfortunately, because it was just so really amazing how many people have become involved. And these are professional people. And yet when I think, gosh, this just all of a sudden came to my awareness. But I mean, this has been going on for time immemorial, right? And, they say money talks, and all kinds of things are going on that we don't really know about. And so, and actually, I wondered during all of this, where is law enforcement? Because I had met with law enforcement, and they had given me a lot of really, really good information. But sometimes when I'm in these certain situations, I think, how can I even approach anyone? Because it's probably my record has already been smeared, right? And so so you just kind of give up, and you think, or do they enforce some laws or not other laws, or are they really going to go after the criminals here, or are they just going to think this story is just too ridiculous? And then I wondered, well, where are the police? And so I did remind, when I met the Clearwater police chief at a council members meeting in February, I think it was, I went to introduce myself, and he said, I remember your call in 2010, right? And I said, yeah. Well, do you remember? And I said this in the last video. Well, do you remember my call in 2011 and 2012 and 13 and 14 and 15 and 16 and 17 and 18 and 19 and 20 and 21 and this call here? And I came to the station to meet with you, and so anyway, yeah, for some reason, they've not been making police reports. And so I'm not sure what that's about, if that is to discount um, my suspicions, or if that is to discount, you know, my apprehensions, my what I have seen, and my own reality, actually. And I did say, well, you know, my condo has all been taken and everything illegally, and you told me to contact attorneys, and then the attorney said, no, you need to call the police. And so I was just kind of like a ping pong ball or a tennis ball going from one to the other, and ultimately got no help at all from anyone. But also I thought, okay, well then where's the sheriff? And so I did go to the, twice I went to the sheriff I called the sheriff since I've been in Florida, since January. And when the deputy came I was staying in a hotel after I had just arrived in Tampa, and I had some terror calls and things like that, and I knew I was being followed. And so anyway, I just wanted to alert them because nobody knew where I was. And so the deputy was very nice, and he did, one of his first questions was, do you know what Baker acting is? And I thought, oh wow, siblings already gotten to him. And so she was already setting the stage. Baker acting is an involuntary commitment by a family member for someone who they believe is either a threat to themselves or a threat to their family. And so I thought to bring that up might be, you know, it's kind of if someone has some mental illness, and so they would say, well, possibly she needs to be observed or whatever. But the deputy did say, he said, do you have any mental illness? And I said, no. And then he said, he said, have you been drinking? And I said, no. And then he said, I smell alcohol on your breath. And I said, I smiled, and I just said, I've only had coffee today and a slice of mozzarella cheese, and I'm really hungry. But no, I haven't. No, you don't smell alcohol on my breath. But anyway, so what I did learn after that, because I thought, well, that's very weird. I would have hoped that he would have taken me a little more seriously. But what I did learn after that is that sibling had strategically had my parents' condo go into default, and which is something that she absolutely promised she would never do. She promised my father that. And the sheriff's department auctioned my condo and apparently all the things in it. And that's why when, after my parents died, sibling had people taking out a lot of my things from my parents' condo, because I had my own condo, but then there were also things that I stored in my parents' condo in their extra bedroom, because my condo was full. And so so she had people taking out my things, and they were things like my baby photos. They were pictures, framed photos of my children and me. There were one-of-a-kind memorabilia, things that, you know, I had made in school, and some of my yearbooks and all of that stuff that I just couldn't fit in my condo. So I had them in boxes in the closet of my parents' second bedroom. My dad said, yeah, just leave it there. We don't ever go in this room anyway, so just fill it up. And so I realized that the sheriff had a sale of all of my things, and that's why they had a deputy standing outside guarding my things, but it was guarding so that I couldn't go and touch my things. And so I imagined that if I had gone down there and I said, you know, that's my photo, that's a picture of me and my 4 children, or I made that when I was in kindergarten, or those are my daughter's baby clothes, or something, they'd say, no, if you try to touch it, we're going to arrest you, because this is all under yellow tape. And so this is all going to auction. And so, or maybe they wouldn't even tell me that, because I didn't know that until just about, you know, a few weeks ago. I didn't know that all these years. didn't know what happened to it. But so yeah, I guess the sheriff and the deputies know all about me, and they probably think, oh, there's that crazy lady who didn't pay her mortgage and it went into default and we have all of her things now, or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, it was in the condo parking lot in the building, and it was actually quite painful, actually, to see my things there where I knew I couldn't touch them, and no one would talk to me about it. And so, and then that was the condo that my sister and I were each to share 50% of. And then my sister actually gave my 50% to my ex. And so so they auctioned it off. He then bought it at auction. And then I heard that he and my sister sold it. So they might have bought it for, I don't know, what do you buy it for? $100, or what do you buy it for? A couple $100,000? I don't know. Anyway, it just sold in January. I think they closed January 1st or December 31st. January 1st of 2022, and it was on the market for $1.1 million, and then it sold for $1 million. And so I just thought, wow, you know, I'm like, I was sleeping in my car. But yeah, so I guess when someone says, oh yes, well, that's my sister, but she was sleeping in her car, I bet that they would think, oh yeah, well, you know, she's not exactly all there, right? But they don't know that every job I applied for was sabotaged, and every account I had was closed, and every person I approached for a loan or whatever said no, and everything I did, you know, there were blockages everywhere. And yet, you know, you all know about my Social Security. I'm entitled to Social Security survivor benefits, and I think I'm the only person on the planet that that they won't give a death certificate to prove that the ex is dead. And without that death certificate, I don't get my Social Security survivor benefits. And so, yeah, they're right there. They're in some account, unless they've been looted, of course, unless somebody else has, you know, taken over my identity, which they have in certain instances. I'm aware of my sister actually forging my signature on documents. But yeah, so where are these people? So you have law enforcement and the police and the sheriff's office, and then, but they're not alone, you know. I think that they just take directives from whoever, you know, who there's got to be a head honcho in this whole thing, right? And so I wonder, well, where's the FBI? And where's the president? And where's the vice president? And where's the governor? And the senators? And the congressmen and women? And the city council members, right? And the investigative journalists, and the Crime Stoppers, and news reporters. And, you know, I called all these people, and I really did. And I called, I wrote, I tried to contact, I would go visit them, you know, and it was like everybody would look at me like, well, lady, get an attorney. And I'm like, well, no attorney will take my case. They told me I need police reports. The police won't give me a police report. So I can't even go before the state's attorney to ask them to become involved because I don't have a police report. And yet there are more crimes that I have experienced and that I've witnessed that just aren't being taken seriously, right? And so notwithstanding, I mean, even the unmitigated harassment for the last, 25 years? Oh my gosh, but certainly, well, I came to Florida in 2004, and now it's 2022, but the harassment really started in full force in 1996 when I told my ex I was leaving, and he said, no, you're not. And so that's when, you know, all kinds of people were following me. I talked about the Sherlock Holmes types of PIs that he had stalking me and following me. It was just kind of like a joke. But anyway, you know, many of us here are here to kind of break some generational curses that a lot of our ancestors have been plagued with. I mean, for centuries and centuries, you know, and they've been needlessly sacrificed, and many have been murdered, and many have been sold and raped and blackmailed and silenced, you know. And even my own dad, you know, he vanished, and then he was pretty much held hostage in a hospital bed, where all tubed up, where he didn't know what was going on, really. And so I think, you know, that can happen. It did happen. And then my mother, you know, was in an estate. I mean, in an assisted living situation, right? And so, you know, and then she was read her last rites while she was fine. And then she was, my sister had stopped all food and water to my mother. For 17 days, my mother went from, I don't know if it was like, I don't really know, like 100 pounds, maybe 80 pounds. Well, anyway, she went to, it was one of the most gruesome things I could have ever imagined. It was the most gruesome thing, actually, to just skin and bone, where she couldn't move. She just laid on her side because she was starved and dehydrated. She wasn't allowed a drop of water or a morsel of food. And if I insisted on it, my sister had told the staff to call the police, and then I would be banned from seeing my mother. So these things do go on, and it's just shocking, really. And so I don't want to belabor the point, but I just want to let you know that you're not alone. Estate litigation has to be one of the ugliest and one of the most corrupt of all, because you've got, you know, the person who is intentioning for their relatives and for specific people to inherit their possessions and their assets. Those people are gone. And so you have kind of like all these money grabbing, yucky people who just will sell their soul to take, you know, something that belonged to their parents or an aunt and uncle who maybe have left them part of their estate, or a dear friend or whatever. But it really brings out the worst in people, right? And so, I don't know, it was just so horrible. So anyway, I think that, oh, I know, I can read you the spendthrift clause, because that is something that is very important to include in a trust. And so it says, the interests of the beneficiaries in principal or income shall not be subject to claims of the creditors or others, and not through legal process, and may not be voluntarily or involuntarily encumbered. So alienated or encumbered. And so you just can't start suing people and expect to take their inheritance, which is, you know, what happened to me. But it's totally illegal. You cannot do that. And so things have to change. You know, the laws must be followed. We can't be like the savage boys on the desert island, on the uninhabited island, where they are making their own rules, and the island was ablaze, and they realized that it was just, it just escalated and escalated. It was like a coffee pot, one of those old-time coffee pots that percolate, and it just kept getting louder and louder and louder and hotter and hotter and hotter. And that's basically what happens in litigation. It's almost like you can have a disagreement, and yet, the more attorneys that get involved and the more court dates and the more costly the litigation is, people's emotions then take over, and then they go for blood, and they want to win at all costs, right? And so anyway, I hope you learned something from this video, and it's shameful, really, how human beings treat one another, and how human beings are so lack such compassion. How about that? And are so selfish and sell their soul. I mean, that's basically the bottom line, is people will do just about anything for money. And I'm really sorry to say that, but from what I've seen, that really is how we have deteriorated, really, as a society, as a collective on planet Earth. And so, anyway, I wish you a beautiful evening, and I thank you so much for being part of this. And if you wouldn't mind, if you would like, share, and subscribe, because there might be other people who are going through some estate issues, and if they can benefit from it, I would really appreciate it. So anyway, until next time, I love you.